Use this whole thing. These are for our next meeting. Is Tina here tonight or just Jenny? Hi, Jen.
My live stream is set to start in less than 1 minute.
Okay, so I'll do that.
Or I can just start it.
Okay.
I'll give you the thumbs up. Okay.
Well, it's 7 o'clock, so I think we'll start up. I want to call the meeting to order and ask people if they have cell phones, if they would kindly turn them off or put them on silent mode. This is the Environment and Natural Areas Committee, and there's 3 committees tonight. Will be followed by Public Works and then Community Planning. I want to acknowledge that we're meeting on the land of the Coast Salish peoples. In particular, recognize the land of the Sienna First Nation. The Sienna Nation had their elections on October 5th, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of Council to offer our congratulations to Chief Russ Chips and Councillor Tracy Lynn Pateman, and also congratulations to a new Councillor, Sheba Sawyer. And thanks to outgoing Councillor Bernice Millette. It was a great pleasure for me to work with her on the Mary Hill project during the last year. So we have an agenda that was circulated, and everyone has that, I expect. I wanted to make 2 amendments to the agenda. Andrew Gage was coming this evening to speak on the Sue Big Oil campaign, but unfortunately he's had a respiratory ailment and we thought it best that he not attend this evening. He's improving, so we're good on that front, but we'll postpone that presentation to another evening. Likewise, under 6A, we were going to reference the MEASC recommendation on the Sue Big Oil campaign. Well, we'll postpone consideration of that MEASC recommendation to another evening. Otherwise, are there any objections to the agenda?
There's the supplemental information.
Yeah, we have the agenda and the pinks, thank you. And if everyone's happy with that, we'll accept the agenda as amended with the addition of the pinks and carry on. Yes. So we start off with public participation, and there's 4 minutes each to speak if anyone would like to speak. And if you do come up to the podium, please state your name and address. Maybe it's a quiet night for public participation in the Environment Committee. All good? Okay, well, we'll proceed right into the agenda that we have. So the first item on the agenda after public participation is adoption of the minutes of the Environment and Natural Areas Committee meeting of September 11th. And folks have had a chance to look at those. Any concerns or considerations?
Move adoption.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Epp, seconded by Mayor Little. Any discussion? We're all good? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our next item is receipt of minutes from the Environment Advisory Select Committee of September 26th. And I just had one comment to make about that. You'll see under number 2 of the Environment Advisory Select Committee meeting, Alison Leduc made a presentation on behalf of the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association, and I guess it was Andy McKinnon, the previous councillor. He mentioned that it would be helpful if we had a list of 6 or 8 items that the association might provide us to think about. sort of condense the thinking. We've received those 6 to 8 items, and they've been provided to Councillor Shukin, who's leading the charge on the detention pond in the buffer land. So that's just a progress report on that particular item. Yes.
Thanks, Councillor Gray. I'm just looking at page 11.
Yep.
And the motion at the top of the page, talking about hiring someone with expertise in hydrology to review. And I think we're going to talk about that further.
As soon as we approve these minutes, we'll move to that. Would you like to offer a motion to approve the minutes?
So,
thank you.
I have a question.
Any questions?
On the same page where you have riparian area regulations,
Yeah.
recommend the district enforce more strict riparian area regulations. Is there a problem with the ones we have now? Is 30 or 16 feet?
Yeah. So what's happened is that the provincial government puts out this document about what we can do versus what the provincial government does. And in that document, they provide for the opportunity for districts to do more than, or to have stricter regulations than are set out by the province.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of like a maximum and minimum.
Mm-hmm.
And so in looking at those and talking to some of the provincial people that the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association put us onto, it looks like there's some things that we could do. So we talked about that at the meeting, and then we're going to bring it forward more formally to the MEASC group, look at it and bring some recommendations to the council if MEASC is interested. So it's kind of moving from minimum to somewhere greater that would be permitted within the provincial government.
I was just wondering if maybe ours weren't working because you wanted to fix something that wasn't working.
I guess specifically what I was thinking about bringing it forward to MEASC was our experience with the Beckingham development, where there's a big riparian area there.
Mm-hmm.
And as I learned more about riparian areas and the regulations as a result of that interaction, it seemed that we might do more. Not thinking about targeting Beckingham because that's a project, a subdivision that's in process, so I wasn't referring at all to dealing with that circumstance. But learning from that experience, I thought it was a good time to come back and talk to council about the issues. But we'll learn more once we get it back to MEASC and kick it around and see what they think would be a good idea versus what's possible. We kind of stop there to get a better look at all the documents and things. So if I had a seconder for the motion to adopt the minutes, I'd proceed. We could proceed. Seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? This is receipt of the minutes. Thank you. So next item on our agenda was going to be the Sue Big Oil campaign recommendation from MEASC, but the second recommendation they asked us to look at, that's found on page 13 of our agenda documents. And what happened there was that MEASC was looking at the question of the referral from council about how we might deal with, or what we reviewing the stormwater management plan, basically provided by the developers and through the process through our engineer. And I guess what happened was we looked at it again, and the general feeling was that we don't really have the qualifications to comment specifically on the engineering data presented in the plan, leaving a big hole in terms of, gee, we've made some comments, we've provided some feedback initially, but the real details were not really the best people to do that. And so we've had 2 presentations at MEASC on green infrastructure. We've had, I think, MEASC general interest in management practices to ensure water quality that council put forward at its last meeting, which I reported out on. But the point really was, if the district needs better advice in hydrology or engineering or even green infrastructure ideas, the committee is saying we need some help with that, or other people need to help us with that. And I've talked to Councillor Shukin about it, and we're bringing it forward to really think what should be the next steps on this. We can move forward. It's just if we need somebody, we should get them. So it's really a comment, I guess, to say that MEASC itself has put forward most of the ideas that's got in terms of cut down the fewest trees possible, recharge the aquifer as best we can, and a series of those things that have been documented. And do we need more advice? Do we need some more people to be involved? Councillor Shukin.
So, thank you, Councillor Gray. I wonder if I could ask a question of staff, because I think this morphs into the motion that we passed on September 11th. And there were several parts to that, one of which was that we go to Colquitt's for more advice on water quality and also quantity issues. And so this kind of morphs into that as well.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there was the notification to City of Langford, the developers, and then their engineer about where we stand in terms of what is an approvable plan from the district and the chosen side. So, Ms. Tarnowski, could I ask, where are we at with those two phases? Because I think they influence what we might do with this one, which I'm in favor of, but it'd be neat to know, current status.
Okay, so in terms of the first point about engaging hydrologists or engaging the hydrologist that we have engaged for further assistance, it has been expressed to us that he is currently has too much workload and is unable to continue with this particular project. So we continue to search for alternative expert on that matter. And matter number 2, letter to the City of Langford that has been sent to them.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Tarnowski. It'd be great to see the letter. Just curious to have it and know what's been informed of, sort of what parties have been informed about what. And so when we made the motion, it was really specific to Colquitt's, which their engineers, their hydrologists. I think there's value in looking at deeper expertise, all in the name of ensuring that what comes out of the stormwater detention pond is solid in terms of quality, and then, but also importantly, what goes into the stormwater detention pond is also solid in terms of quality. That is maybe a hydrologist, but not necessarily. I mean, I think we've seen that there's people with expertise in biophysical matters that also can influence and have knowledge about stormwater matters. So, I mean, it says hydrology and engineering, but I feel like we should go as broad as we can to get the expertise that we need for this. Again, the question to me, number one, is quality, and how are we going to get the expertise to inform what we see from that plan? So,
I think that's consistent with what was talked about at MEASC. In addition, we've heard subsequently from the Bilston Watershed Habitat Protection Association some names and resources, different people who might be involved. So there's one question is the flow of water and the amount of water and regulating the water flow. And I'm no expert, but that's sort of the engineering side of it. The quality of the water side goes a little bit different. Equally, it's engineering, but it can be other people as well, ecosystem type individuals. I think what the message here from MEASC is, we maybe can't provide all advice, so as needed, the district should proceed with other experts. I don't know that we need a motion in particular to hear about that, in the sense of, I think it makes totally good sense. It fits with what you put forward at the last meeting, Councillor Shukin. Just making sure that we're looking at quality as well as quantity. And that's where the green infrastructure, I'm using the word green infrastructure, but we've talked about at this table quite a bit, the idea of plantings and the bioswales and these kinds of things where the water is passing through biological type filters. Councillor Shukin.
I would like to pass this motion, put it forward.
Yeah.
But if I could offer an amendment to it, and it would be something along the lines of that council engage a qualified environmental professional with expertise in hydrology and engineering to review the stormwater management plan. So the only change is to engage a qualified environmental professional to review this Center Mountain stormwater plan.
So I think that sounds good, and it would be for council to encourage staff to do so, I guess, or encourage the staff to do all of that. And we wouldn't be so much amending MEASC's recommendation. I think MEASC has given the recommendation. What would we like to do with it?
Yeah.
And you're choosing to take MEASC's recommendation and make a new motion which is aligned with that. So let's not work on amending this, but rather a new motion, or a motion from this committee to council.
Okay.
And if I got it right, the council engage, or the council
Direct staff.
yeah, direct staff at the district to engage a qualified environmental professional
With expertise in hydrology and engineering. Yeah. Yeah, I'm good with that. Hydrology and engineering to review the Central Mountain Stormwater Management Plan. Really, we're looking for somebody with expertise in the questions that we have. Quality, quantity.
Yeah.
So moved.
Thank you. Would anyone like to second that motion? Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. So moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. And any discussion on the item? Mayor Little.
Yeah, so it depends on what question we're asking. So Alison the Duke had put forth some recommendations. What we truly need is an expert in green infrastructure. So in low impact rainwater management practices and stream ecology, and to focus on the goals of the maintenance and of healthy aquatic ecosystems, both in the Machosen Creek and the Bilston Creek. So it depends on what kind of question we're asking, what kind of expertise we want. I'm not sure if a qualified engineer is going to be able to provide us with that, and maybe we should leave it open that we should have an expert in green infrastructure, because that's really the question. It's not only the flow, which an engineer can provide us, of course, but it also is the quality, and the quality of what is coming out of that, as well as compared to pre-existing pre-development conditions. So I'd be in favor of it as long as we can keep it open, so that we get an answer to the questions that we're asking.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Councillor Craig.
Yep.
Just one clarification. If we went with the qualified environmental professional, that would include something like a biologist, or I'm not sure who else it would include, but it would possibly cover somebody who has that expertise. So
I think the
it
change.
green infrastructure. Yeah.
I think the change here might be that we've already passed a motion that's talking about the sort of the engineering expertise, and here I think the addition, if I may, what Mayor Little's suggesting is let's be clear about that. So I might suggest the amendment to the motion that the environmental professional with knowledge in hydrology and engineering. So we're not looking for an expert in that area. We're looking for someone who's knowledgeable about that, but brings this other skill. Would that answer your
Yeah.
intervention? Yeah. Okay.
Second that, if you're proposing.
Sure. Okay. So we're going to change the word from expertise to knowledge of.
Okay.
Everybody clear what the motion is? The amendment, rather? All in favor? Great, passed, carried. And then should we turn to the main motion, then the council directs staff to engage a qualified environmental professional with knowledge in hydrology and engineering to assist with the stormwater management plan. Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. That's great. I think that'll be a help to, I hope that will be a help to our administrator and our engineer who are working on this project, and it's been a tricky one for sure. The next item on our agenda is the staff report. So this is item 7A, a staff report on the BC Zero Carbon Step Code. And I imagine everyone's had the opportunity to review the document. So what's going on here is that we've not so long ago moved up in the BC Step Code, the building step code, which largely has to do with insulating the buildings, keeping them warm once they're heated up, or reducing the amount of energy required to heat a building. And then the province brought in this zero carbon step code recently and said, hey, folks, you can do better than that, reduce the emissions that it takes to heat the buildings. And as Ms. Legishan points out in our briefing note, we can, if we do this, it'll help us move along in terms of our goals in our Mechosen Climate Action Plan in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions, transport being our first big emission, or our leading source of emissions. Our second source of emissions is buildings. It's not going to have a huge impact in the sense that it's new buildings. It's not all existing buildings, but it points us in the right direction, I think. The timeline has been established by a number of other communities in the Capital Regional District who are working on this, and so it looks like we might be able to match just with them and move forward. So we've got a positive staff report in terms of the elements that we've got here in terms of making a change. It sounds like it fits with the revision of our building bylaw. We've had a presentation at the last council meeting by Jane Devonshire from the climate action groups. Dr. Janet Ray sent us correspondence on it about the benefits both globally but also inside houses. And then we have a number of pieces of correspondence today in our package, which are all pointing to the advisability of this idea. Would anybody like to make a motion with regards to the zero carbon step code? Or would you like to discuss it a little bit first? Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Gray. I'm in favor of it progressing on this. One question I have, though, is we had discussed some of the updates that need to be made to the building bylaw.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, I don't want to delay unnecessarily, but should we consider those changes as part of this change, or should we do this and then come back?
Let's ask Micheline.
So the building bylaw is in the process of being amended, so this will be included in that amendment if council passes the motion to adopt early adoption for net zero carbon emission.
Through you, Councillor, I have a question to Mr. Arnowski. Any sense of when we'll see the changes, the proposed changes?
The building bylaw is scheduled to come forward at the November meeting, the first meeting, council meeting. November, I can't see from here. November the 6th.
Thanks. I would move that council provide direction to staff to proceed with amendments to the building bylaw as it relates to the zero carbon step code, and staff will bring the proposed amendments for consideration to council.
Thank you,
So
Councillor Shukin. Seconded by Mayor Little. And I guess what I'm thinking about here is that we match the timelines of the other communities so that the industry is all in line and hopefully achieve step 4. Any further discussion? We're all good? Yes, Councillor.
Just say I do support the step code, but I also think that there should be backups allowed, particularly here in a case of a long-term power outage. I think in our community especially, we have a lot of seniors, but even in general, I think a power outage, if there's absolutely no other source of heat but electricity, can leave a lot of people in trouble. And I think it's just important for safety reasons to be able to allow people to be able to have a backup, whether it's a gas fireplace or a wood stove. Because not a lot of people can handle or afford generators.
I think those are both allowable under the scheme. And I can imagine that new builds as well would probably, as time goes forward, add generators to the buildings and that sort of thing. But we're learning as we go in terms of where the construction industry will go. But that backup is kind of a necessary thing given our rural nature of our community. Okay, well, call the question. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So I guess the next thing is my update, and just a happy story really. All three environmental resolutions that we brought through the committee went to UBCM and were approved unanimously. And so that's the reducing acreage outside the Port of Vancouver, supporting biodiversity in local communities, and production of old-growth forests. And that was terrific. I want to specifically thank Councillor Schuken for speaking and arguing out the case for the reducing anchorages at the UBCM meeting. And he reported to me that was a pretty interesting experience. And then also specific thanks to our residents. All of these things, all of these three motions came from residents in the community. Bev Bacon and Alison Leduc, thanks for their advocacy work on the reducing anchorages question. Joan Rosenberg was early to our council advocating an end to old growth logging and what we might do about it. And that morphed into our letter and then eventually the position of AVIC. The Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, and then Jackie Larkin for asking us to put forward a resolution. And then finally, the biodiversity resolution was promoted by Sierra Club of BC. We learned as we were working on it, and a late Metchosanite, Ken Farquharson, was an early founder of the Sierra Club BC, so it's kind of nice that we did all that work together. And also MEASC, who was very supportive. I just had a couple of other things to report, and one is that the fire department has got a chipping program going for people who want to bring in clean materials, plant materials for chipping, along the lines of the Fire Smart program. There's a sign outside now just behind the fire hall that lays out the simple rules to follow. And it is our hope that an alternative to burning in the backyard, chipping is an alternative, and so hopefully it will reduce a little bit of the burning that goes on in the community and also motivate people to fire smart their properties. I wondered too, I got a call or an email rather from another resident, Bill Cave, last week asking about our climate declaration. And we got looking at he and I both and realized, gee, we don't have that up on the website. So I wanted permission of council that we put that up in a prominent place on the website and link it to our climate action plan. If no one objects to that, we'll get that done in the next week or so. All good? Great, thank you. Well, it'd be remiss for me not to mention that yesterday was the first year anniversary of our election team. So that's kind of cool. It's been a very active environment committee. It's been a very active council. All the committees have been active, I would say. Or at least that's been my interpretation of what's been going on. And so kudos and congratulations to everybody. It's been a year of building relationships and both in the community and elsewhere. Steep learning curve. But I expect we'll strengthen those things as we get into our second year. And I know there's an inaugural meeting coming up, so I don't not say more about it, but just to mark the day of yesterday was the election date. And thanks to Mayor and Council and other councillors and to staff and to the community. We have a few pieces of correspondence to receive. A piece from the David Suzuki Foundation, another from the Pembina Institute. These are about the Zero Carbon Step Code. Another from the a broad range of groups who are involved in industry supporting the Zero Carbon Step Code. A letter from Glenn Schentag, and also from I lost my piece of paper, 1 second. And Micheline Coté Bamford about getting methane out of our buildings, which is also about the Zero Carbon Step Code. And then we have the pinks. Correspondence we received from on the issue of the Step Code from Alison Leduc and Bev Bacon. And then 3 pieces of correspondence regarding the Sue Big Oil campaign, 2 in support and 1 opposed. The 2 in support were Bev Bacon, Katie Nelson, and the 1 opposed was from Charlotte Gourlay. So maybe I can just, if everyone's okay with it, we'll just accept all of those documents, receive all of those documents into the record. With that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn the meeting. A motion by Mayor Little, seconded by Councillor Schuken. All in favor? Thank you. So it'll just be a minute or two, and we'll start at the next meeting.
Okay, welcome to the Public Works and Director Services Committee meeting. We have a pink to be added to the agenda, which is a summary of a presentation, which coming right up by Colin Doyle. So with the addition of the pink, is there any additions or changes in the agenda? Moved by Mary Little, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favour? All right, first presentation, we have a couple tonight. This is based on Colin Doylan, the Director of Land Development and Acquisitions, BC Indigenous Housing Society, combining affordable housing with the new fire hall. So, thanks for being here. Yeah, if you can just speak into the mic, that'd be great.
Sure, there we go. I'm taller than the mic. Thank you very much for having me today. Very much appreciated. And this is not necessarily a summary of the presentation, but just a summary of the sources of potential funding as it relates to the concept that I'll just discuss briefly. So you're left with some substance on where might we find additional resources to advance such a discussion. Yeah. So open to questions, but I can give a quick summary of what the concept would be. Hearing about the development for the new fire hall and the need and the dollars that have been already brought forward from council to look at the feasibility of a new fire hall. I thought it of interest to bring forward the concept of putting housing on the same site as the fire hall footprint as it is today. It's a theme that you're seeing in many municipalities across Canada and the US right now about leveraging the public asset and putting housing on top. We just saw that in Victoria, Vancouver, even Washington, D.C., Calgary as an example. Those are larger municipalities with a larger footprint, of course, so it's much more larger unit count, but still the theme, I think, is important in terms of there would be an opportunity, I believe, for council to consider putting a modest amount of units either on top of the fire hall or beside the fire hall, and then you'd be able to provide some very much needed housing for the demographic of other first responders or what have you chose to do. And so that was the background, of course, with my housing society. We're one of we're one of British Columbia's largest affordable housing providers. We have about 22 buildings, about 1,000 units. We mostly operate in Vancouver, but we're expanding. We're formerly called Vancouver Native Housing. But we wanted to provide our capacity and resources in a number of places. Not to say that you have to work with us, but I just wanted to provide that this is the concept. So I've looked at the site, looked at the opportunity, and it would just seem, I love Metchosin, love this area. My wife grew up here running the Weirs Beach Campground. My boys go to Westmont. I sit on the board of the Westmont Metchosin Westmont Montessori School. And so just wanted to see if we could impact the community as best we could to provide something that was so desperately needed. And open to questions and any considerations that you might have, and just to advance this interesting idea and leave you with some resources for funding. Be it there be three immediate opportunities for funding. You'll see I've got extra copies if anybody wants some. With the CMHC, they have a seed fund. And then BC Housing has something called the Property Development Fund, and then Van City also has some funding available for looking at the capacity and feasibilities of a housing development such as this. And then later in that brief, you'll see a longer list of more development sources of funding for actually building it out. So the concept is if you added affordable housing or housing to the mix, and you could even do affordable homeownership program, it's a whole mix of things you could consider. it would bring additional resources to council to supplement the cost of redeveloping the fire hall. And there is a scenario in which if you built enough of the affordable housing, BC Housing might be in a position to actually 100% finance the build out, because it had enough affordable housing units and you were bringing enough of a contribution from council that they could finance the complete redevelopment of the site, which would then put council in a very favorable position to not have to finance itself for the redevelopment of the fire hall. If you put enough housing there, there's a number of ways of looking at the feasibility of such as that, but that was an interesting opportunity. I think that's something that a lot of other municipalities have looked at doing and have done, as I mentioned before, to leverage the asset that you have, and to look at and open up, as a result of that, open up other funding opportunities and financing opportunities that wouldn't normally exist. It was just the redevelopment of a fire hall. If you add housing to it, then you can access the mass amounts of housing dollars that have been made available across the province and across the country. So I thought that was a fiscally responsible way of presenting a solution that also provides that net benefit of housing to your community.
Great, thank you. Well, council questions for Mr. Doyland. Okay, Councillor Shute.
So I've heard whispers and rumors of talk about housing on the fire hall, but I don't know more than that, and how many we might consider, like, and again, sort of costs, like what the economics of that all are. So I wonder what the timing is to get council or this committee more information about what's being considered. Is it 4 homes, 2 homes, 3 homes, 10?
Well, we had quite a discussion about this at the Fire Hall Steering Committee meeting, and and you did mention approximately how many houses that or housing units might be feasible, and as well as the fact that those units could be directed to firefighters or farm workers or things like that, and as well talked about a starting point, like where council starts, and that possibly we could, whether we decided to go ahead with something like that or not, we could potentially also get funding for a consultant.
Yes, yeah, so the funding for a consultant would come from the SEED fund or the BC Housing Property Development Fund or Van City to supplement the capacity dollars or funding feasibility dollars that you've already indicated or provided for. In terms of the final numbers, that's up for council's decision on the number of units. I've done some assessment of what you could do, but I was working off my assumptions, not necessarily the facts of assumptions of council. So I was just saying, hey, is there a possibility here? And yes, there is. There definitely is. So it would be my thought that it would be recommended to work on the feasibility to find out what is possible, what is acceptable for the community and council of what you could do on this site, and meet that those financial metrics, but also the unit metrics that make it amenable.
Great.
So as we already have a feasibility study, about to happen for the fire hall, we could just expand it.
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And as a result of that, probably garner more funding if you wanted it for feasibility, because of you're looking at housing from those 3 sources.
Right. Any other questions?
Colin, I had a question just about the issue of who might live in the housing. So I wonder if you know about this. I've heard that you could set up like this idea where you rent specifically to workers who are, or in this case it would be firefighters possibly. And then what happens if they then leave the firefighting group here in Metchosin? I understand as a landlord you can't then ask them to leave their residence to free it up for another firefighter. Is that correct or incorrect? Do you know about those rules?
It all depends how you set up the tenancy in the first place. And then you get an exemption from the Residential Tenancy Board for the purposes of employment-based staff housing. So if you set up that expectation that the housing is as a result of your employment, and you put things in place and expectations, and you get the exemptions needed, that you can make that happen and work for both parties. It's after the fact, after you enter into a regular tenancy agreement, that you can't go back according to the law. So as long as you did it from the outset with the right expectations and the right and abiding by that rule set or those exemptions, you're okay.
Thanks. That seems to make sense. So it's the nature of the contract that's made between the tenant and the landlord.
Yeah, and the exemptions that you get and the pre-approval for such exemptions from the residential tenancy branch.
And so if that was kind of the drive behind doing housing, there are a number of different ideas, but that's one of them. Would we be best to approach the provincial government at the moment and ask them about that exemption possibility?
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think the provincial government would be quite excited about the example and case study that this would present for all our rural municipalities throughout BC to leverage your public asset, your asset like a fire hall to provide something so desperately needed in the communities. I just think it makes a lot of sense, and I think the province would probably look to provide resources, in my experience, to help make this a success.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I really appreciate your guidance. How many, I'm trying to pin you down here, how many affordable units do you think would be required in order for us to get money for the rebuild?
Yeah, well, I think you'd need more than 5, but you'd want to look at what your overall cost of your fire hall is going to be versus the overall cost of building the additional units, and then you work out the financials from that. Of course, I'm going to say putting as many units as possible as you can always makes more financial sense, but you also don't want to necessarily always do that because you want to meet the greater other needs of the community as well in terms of look and feel. So I'm very cognizant of that in the chosen. So I think that I'd love to be pinned down on an answer because then I'd have all the facts to provide you that, but unfortunately I don't have the facts, so I couldn't in good faith give you a number that would make sense other than I think you'd get all those answers from a strong feasibility that properly incorporated the affordable housing considerations. The trick is it's how many units, it's also maybe how many bedrooms. Because units can make 1, 2, 3 bedroom, 4 bedrooms depending on your housing needs. So sometimes when people talk about units, that doesn't talk about the actual number of people you're serving. So I think they're both considerations.
Okay. And also, yeah, I think this is a great idea. It's a perfect time now that we're heading into the feasibility study to expand that. We don't have the money to do the complete rebuild right now. We've got some, but we don't have very much. So I think it's great timing. I'd also be interested to hear what the fire chief has to say regarding this. This is her domain, and so I'd like to hear her comments if she's here in the audience. That's okay.
Yeah, so I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm here for any other questions.
And the other, before you go, so the first step then would be to investigate the seed funding.
The three sources: the seed funding, the property development funding from BC Housing, and also the additional funding from Betsy.
Betsy.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, I also forgot. There's also funding from FCM. Federation of Community Municipalities, in the social affordable housing. They have pilot dollars and feasibility dollars as well. I listed, I just forgot to mention it to you. So there's 4 sources of potential additional feasibility funding.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thank you very much. Chief Dunlop, would you care to throw in your 2 cents worth?
Well, good evening. Yeah, I think it's a brilliant idea. Being able to bring housing to responders is needed not just in Metchosin, but the entire West Shore. It's an issue. My firefighters who have heard about this, I've already got, quite a few that would love to participate in something like this. This also, if you take it from another aspect, depending on how it all works out, that it could also provide us cost savings in other ways. Take, for instance, our fire underwriter survey. Being able to house and have firefighters at the hall 24/7 can significantly reduce our rating, in which case all your property insurance can significantly decrease as well. So there are other aspects of having these responders in the hall responding to calls at night, when typically they have to drive 8 to 10 minutes to get to the hall, to then get in a truck and travel another 8 to 10 minutes to get to you. Having them at the hall responding directly, that takes them down into that 8-minute response time, which is huge. So there's a lot of not just safety, but also cost-effective measures that this would certainly bring to the table.
Thanks.
The other thing that I think is really cool about it is that, this is something that we wanted to look at in closer detail. There's no other fire hall that has this like responder housing, and I think it would be a really unique kind of a new thing to be the first one, in Canada to have something like this, a responder housing complex. And I'm not talking just firefighters. It can be for ambulance, it can be for RCMP, it can be for other fire departments, it can be for care aides, just the caregivers, people that need homes, to keep them here local.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And obviously, if Metchosin ends up being sort of next on the housing hit list from the province, this might be one way that, if it works, that we could mitigate that. Anyway, what should we do to proceed with this? Make a recommendation that staff include that in the feasibility study for the fire hall? To make a motion to that effect?
Yeah, thanks very much. I was wondering what we would do with it. I like everything you're saying. I guess it's incorporate the idea of housing. But what are we talking? What kind of housing is it? Affordable housing or sorry, what do we call it? Thank you.
So you can pretty much build any type of housing you want, but the funding requirements from the different funding programs that you would like to see most likely affordable housing or a mix of affordable and market housing. So it's not always 100% affordable, and affordable doesn't mean subsidized housing. Affordable means 20% below the market rate currently in your market area being chosen. So that's typically what affordable is defined as. So it's not your $500 a month or your $375 a month rent for anyone. It's deemed just affordable. In Vancouver, that means an affordable one bedroom is at $2,200. We're here, that's much different, right? So you would end up doing what's called a housing needs study to understand what this would mean for your area. One maybe already have been provided. So you could just work off those numbers or update those numbers. But again, affordable is typically the basis of what they require to secure the financing that you're seeing. Typically is about 51% of the units go as affordable and 49% of the units go as market. And so that's basically it. That's the only difference. So it's the win for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. All right, there is a motion on the table. Do we have a seconder?
So I'm unclear about the motion. So the motion is to ask staff to include the funding from the CMHC seed funding, the Property Development Fund, the Van City and FCM in the deliberations with the feasibility study, and to consider affordable accommodation above the fire hall. Is that what it is?
Sounds good to me.
Okay.
Ms. Tarnowski.
Would you like to make a recommendation for staff to have a conversation with the three agencies about obtaining the additional funding for the feasibility study?
Oh, right. Yes, that's we could add that to it. Be great. All right. Perhaps think we've got it. You okay with it? All right. So can we have a seconder then?
Sorry, Councillor.
Oh.
I'm actually not clear on the motion. So we're talking about incorporating housing options into the feasibility study. I think that's one motion. And then the second one is...
I thought it could be
to have a
included.
conversation with the three funders about the possibility of getting additional funding for the feasibility study.
Okay. I'll second the first motion.
Okay, thanks. Any further discussion on that one?
Just a really quick one. I mean, housing, just as Colin was saying, we should maybe keep it open and talk about housing options. And then as we move a little deeper, we can streamline it a little more. So
Yeah, decide whether or not we are interested or not.
Yeah.
Okay, any more? All in favor? All right, and the second motion is to, my mind is not completely blank, to ask staff, to look at funding for the feasibility study. So,
I'll second it.
okay, seconded by Councillor Shukin. All in favor? All right, now we have another presentation, and it's nice to see a group of young people here. It's always great to have a few generations younger than what we usually are. So if you just come up and introduce yourselves and what you're going to talk about today.
Hello, people of the council. I'm Nathan.
I'm Emma.
I'm Caleb. And I'm Max.
We're 4 students from Brooks West Shore School, which is in Colwood, right by Rose University. And we are here to pitch an idea for the Westmont Prize competition that we have entered.
Okay, if you can just speak into the microphone, because what's happened is then it goes out. We're live streaming, so if you speak into the microphone, then everybody out there can hear you as well. Be great.
Here.
It's tricky.
Let me see if I can.
So, as I said before, we are 4 students from Brooks West Shore School, and we're all in grade 8. And what we are here for is we have entered a competition called the Westmont Prize, which is open to people all over North America from grade 7 to 12. And we have to, there's usually a topic, and this year's topic is great problems equal great solutions. So we need to think of a problem that we have in our either world or community, and we need to try to solve it. So our problem that we tried to solve was that we found in Machosen there's not as many sports facilities as we would like, and we found out that usually people who have disabilities or in wheelchairs, they can't be playing sports as well. So we wanted to make a solution that all people could benefit from.
Okay. So, as Emma said, the Westmont Prize is a competition open to all students our age across North America. And we found that in Machosen there is a lack of actual sports. And we feel that that's something that's really important to us, as well as people who are disabled. Okay, so this is a screenshot from Google Maps, and you might recognize it. It's the space right across from us, next to the Mile Zero Brewing place and the old school. We feel that would be a great place to build a space where we can have sports to all people, disabled and able. Yeah.
So our main idea is to make a wheelchair to play sports for people who use wheelchairs. And as you can see, soccer is at the top, and there's basketball and also a tennis court. There's already a tennis court there, but we hope to refurbish it. There's also a little communal space and storage and rental space.
So, this is what it would look like if we actually put it on the space. So the soccer field at the top, then the basketball court, the tennis, communal space, and then the storage room. So part of the Westmont Prize was that, but then we also had to come up with a way to allow people who are disabled to actually play sports. So our idea was we went onto an online platform that we have access to, and we created a 3D model of the wheelchair And our main focus was, as Caleb just said, power soccer. Yeah. So power soccer is it's the same thing as original soccer, just in wheelchairs. So they do the exact same thing, just we don't have it on the island, and there's a lot of people and kids who are disabled and want to play sports, but it's not open to them. So yeah, as I said, we've designed a concept that we would like to bring and make it a reality.
So this is a rough copy of the wheelchair. There's a metal box in the front, so it's the actual wheelchair that they have. Just bigger wheels so they can move better. And then there's a metal box so they can hit the ball to try and get it in the net. Yeah. And this is like multiple views of the wheelchair. And at the back, it's just something so they don't fall over whenever they hit. It's just for stability. Any questions?
What would you like from council?
So the reason why we came here is for this project, we just wanted to communicate with different people, like in our community also. And we don't want like an affirm yes from you guys that yes, it's a great idea, we can put this in action. All we want is if you guys would be able to take it into consideration, or even have like a quick thought on it. Like it doesn't have to happen like right now, but like maybe in the future, like one day this could actually be a reality.
Okay, anyone? Questions?
Thank you very much. I really appreciate your presentation, each of you having something important to share with us. I am one of the councillors that sits on the board for the West Shore Parks and Recreation. And in a recent meeting, they were looking at other parts of our community, being the West Shore. It's Colwood, Langford, the Chosen Highlands that are on this board. And it did come up as to we do have a gymnasium and we have fields, so this is quite timely. Also, being a person that sits on the IACTI, which is the accessibility group, we're always interested in learning some different things about more accessible means of integrating people into our community. So I do appreciate what you have to say here. This is very good. Thank you.
Sure. Thank you. So did you guys invent power soccer? Is that a thing? It's a
Yeah, so it is a thing already. In Vancouver, I think it's a relatively big thing. They have a whole World Cup and everything, but it's not accessible on Vancouver Island, and it's not widespread over the world. Yeah.
So your project is to develop the wheelchair or prototype the wheelchair, or is it to come up with the facility and the space, or is it a combination of both? Or?
It's a combination.
Okay, great. Okay.
Well, certainly it's something that we'll keep in mind as we move forward with the whole development of the school into a community center. I think it's we really appreciate you coming and sharing your ideas with us. Mayor Little?
Yeah, thank you. And I'm just wondering, with the Westmont Prize, how much is it? How much do they give you for your prototype design and follow through? Do you know?
Okay. So the prize for winning is the UVic. They come on board and help the idea come to life. And then also there's a prize for the top 3. So first place is 10,000 to go towards academic funds, so 2.5K split between the group. Yeah.
Okay. And I imagine if you're applying for this prize, you might want to have a letter of support or something from the district. Would it help you if we get a council resolution, perhaps Council F, to provide you with a letter of recommendation that we are excited about the prospects of your entering into this Westmont Prize, and that we're willing to support it. Would that be helpful?
Yeah.
Yes, that would be very helpful. One thing they do look for is like evidence that you have like made some like differences through the process so far, not even at the end. Just like there is evidence that you have like talked to different people and did your research on different things. So that would be very helpful.
Okay, Councillor Gray.
Thanks so much for the presentation. It looks like quite a project. I'm curious to know if you folks have been able to talk with some young people who are in wheelchairs. Have you got contacts that way? Because one of the things that would be really helpful, I think, in terms of your thinking about stuff and working through, is to work with some people who would benefit from the ideas that you've got.
Yeah. So at my church, St. Mary's, there's a guy called Gage, and he's in a wheelchair, and he's the nicest guy. Like he's such a nice guy, but he is in a wheelchair. So he plays bocce, and with his day group and everything, but he just doesn't have the ability to play some of the sports that personally we love and enjoy to play every day.
Well, maybe it'd be nice to have Gabe sort of involved in some of the design issues.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, well, I think I can make a motion that the mayor, through staff, send a letter of support, yeah, for your project. So
Yeah, and we encourage you in your application for the Westmont Design Prize. Great.
So we have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? All right, well, thanks very much for coming.
Thank you.
Great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with your project. Okay, we'll move on to public participation.
Wow, it's kind of hard to follow that presentation. Tonight I'd like to share a few general thoughts with council regarding the committee report.
Could you please just give your name and
Oh,
address?
sorry. Yep, Betty Hildreth, 859 Arden Road. And it's regarding the committee report entitled Elementary School Site Framework and Management. And thank you to staff for writing that report. It's brought a few things to light. I'm speaking here as a private citizen, not representing any particular group. These are simply my personal observations from where I find myself at this point in time. So for more than 30 years, I've quietly, yet enthusiastically, volunteered with many community groups, associations, societies, committees, initiatives. Some of them are sanctioned and some of them are not. I've witnessed the slowly evolving improvement that is shaping and tailoring this place where we live. We, like other communities around us, are at a pivotal point in maintaining what has been created as unique and grassroots. An arts and cultural strategy may be as good a place as any to serve as a launching pad for management of the school site as a whole, and ultimately as a vision for the village core. The three possible options outlined in the staff report are a good start, but there are a number of local management opportunities available as well, like really local, on-site, and economically viable opportunities that can be added to the list for discussion. And then missing from the report, or maybe coming from the report, is the problem of accessing our newly renovated auditorium, which has so much potential. And that needs to be strategized as well and as soon as possible. Building Mechosen's new fire hall will help in the future with congestion, scheduling, and the need for storage in the school site and on the grounds. But right now the gym is landlocked. The site, once known as Mechosen Elementary School, may not be the cash cow that some people seem to expect, but the gym, being accessible and properly promoted, believe me, it can be the goose that laid the golden egg. This gym issue could be looked at right away under the arts and culture framework of this strategy. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Chris Vanderwater, 4569 William Head Road. And I'm here to laud your efforts in considering to have a arts and cultural strategy. I think it's a great idea to bring the arts into the community. It's very good for everything. And I got what was that? Because there's always a question about what is culture. We all know what culture is, but if you try to describe it, it's hard. And so I just stole this paragraph that I just want to read, if it's okay. Culture can mean many things to many people. Simply put, culture is both the expression and celebration of the values and aspirations of a community. This is done through all manner of human activities that characterize a community and its people and shape its unique place. It includes the sharing of ideas, learning through individual and locally authentic community expression in the fine visual, literature, media material, and performing arts, heritage, and the sharing experience of history. To engage in cultural planning, therefore, requires knowing how people live, work, and play, and relate to their local environment. So it's a pretty encompassing, well, it's our culture. And so I wish you good luck with that, and look forward to seeing some positive outcome to this plan. Also, I wanted to speak to the gymnasium, and it's coming on stream here in about 10 weeks, and there's still quite a bit to be done. But like Betty said, I'm also in favor of an on-site manager, because it's not just the renting of the gym, it's all the things that go with it, like make sure the doors are open, make sure the doors are locked, keeping wild animals out, telling people where to go. It's not your time, it's their time. It's endless. So that's why I think that the right on-site person could do it in a part-time. I think that'd probably be the most cost-effective way to address the gyms. If it's run right with a proper website, it could be very popular. Like there's lots of groups already that are talking to me and other people about how, what, when, why. So I urge you to get on with having something in place when it opens. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, last call for public participation. All right, then, move on to the adoption of the minutes of the Public Works and Public Services Committee meeting of September 11th. We have a motion. Moved by Councillor Shukin, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any questions? All in favor? And then the receipt of minutes for the Healthy Community Advisory Select Committee meeting of September 26th.
Move receipt.
Moved by Councillor Gray, seconded by Mayor Little. Any discussion? That one? All in favor? All right, we move on to the report. So You do have the staff report on the Metros Elementary School site and management. So, Ms. Tarnowski, could you fill us in?
So the report essentially outlines what Ms. Hildreth and Mr. Vanderwater has expressed in the public participation session. It's meant to serve as an opening venue for discussion as to what has to be done with the school. We recognize that I know the community is very excited that the gym's coming on board really, really soon. So the report is really meant to outline the next steps and strategies and really high-level strategies of what to do to ensure that the space is going to be as available as possible to the community. So it's really just proposing that council or a committee in this case consider doing a visioning, call it whatever you vision, a workshop, strategic planning, whatever it is, but really just envisioning and setting priorities for the use of the space. And as I've said in the report, that there is some understanding in the community that prioritized use have been established by previous council, however staff was unable to find the resolution. So I'm really, as a starting point, is let's as community have that discussion of what the prioritized use is going to be. So that's the starting point, followed by having a discussion as to who is actually going to take bookings. That's one part of it. And the last part being having an on-site person, parties, whatever it is, to check the space, to make sure that unlock the space, all that kind of good stuff. So that's on-site presence. So as I see that, that's really a three-quarter process for the space.
Thank you, and I do appreciate having a staff report kind of getting us moving on this. I know there's a lot of different options for the management. I know personally I've got one option is to have to hire somebody, whether staff or by a contract that could be sort of multi-purpose, that could work part-time as an assistant for the fire chief, who really needs help and has brought in about $2.5 million in grants, as well as considerable money that we've received in deployment of our really well-trained firefighters. So, so we have funding, part of it for sure, because we don't have to put that money out for other things. So anyway, and then that person could also work and some evenings and weekends and handle the booking for the gym and overseeing the management of the gym. So that's just one type of option. But at any rate, there are a few possibilities that need to be considered. And so with that in mind, I would like to make a motion that council hold a visioning workshop, possibly with the engagement of a facilitator, to set priorities for use of the school and grounds and discuss options for management and maintenance.
I'll second for discussion.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Sheeran, second. Okay, discussion.
Thank you. So, thank you, Councillor. When I was thinking about this and reading the report, instinctively I wrote down some notes in just in terms of how I can think about the school site. And I'm so used to hearing, referring to the school, but you're not sure whether you're referring to the instinct portion, the MACA portion, the space in between, or the gym. And so I just thought to myself, I'm going to call it those things: MACA portion, instinct portion, the gym, and then the field, of course. But the one thing, I'm not necessarily opposed to the visioning exercise, but I think I'd like to really make the challenge clear. And I'm not sure that the challenge is with the whole building. I think that the big immediate challenge right now is to figure out how to manage the gym. And the more I learn about the school site, I recognize it's a really complicated space. But I'm wondering if right now our priority is figuring out how to manage the bookings of the gym. So again, I'm not opposed to what you're proposing, but I'm looking at what the priorities are, and that's what strikes me right now. So, and I have to also confess, I'm not really, I can't buy at this moment the development of an arts and cultural strategy. No disrespect, Mr. Tarnowski. I don't know if that's what we need at this moment for that site. So, but
Well, I'm sort of thinking that's what the workshop would be about, is how we're going to move forward, what steps that need to be taken, kind of what are the priorities, what we're looking at, just so that we do actually get moving on it. We've been talking about it for a long time.
okay.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you. We have been talking about it, and quite a lot of work and volunteer work has gone into the building, which we purchased the whole building, the whole site actually, in 2017. And there were a lot of visionaries at that time and through the years, and some of that has changed. We do have a portion of the building that is commercial, and a portion of it that is arts and cultural. The boundaries, there seems to be boundaries. Those have changed over time. We had expected, I think, as a community, for more commercial. In the spring, this council had spoken about having facility booking agents, so we temporarily contracted Instinct to do that for us, and that contract will be coming up fairly quickly in the next couple of months. So that's what I kind of was thinking this was about, although there is more information here. We talked about that so it would give us enough time to consider who or what a booking agent might be, and also considering the renovations that were taking place adjacent to the gymnasium, which is the washrooms and the kitchen, which is why we haven't booked out the gymnasium for things like small conferences, weddings, and those sorts of things, as well as recreational aspirations for our residents or what have you. There's a lot of potential there, but not to be limited. And I think having something like a workshop initially, or a working group, would help flesh out our next steps. And I applaud all the people that have, to date, been involved with that site and bringing it to where it is now. It was kind of a stumbler for a while. It is not, it's not right now operating in a fiscally, what would be the word? It's costing us money right now, and it will continue costing us money. We managed to move money back into the money that we borrowed, back into the reserves that we borrowed it from, but we still are paying back, so to speak. So in how we're doing that is we are actually taxing the citizens of this community $42,500 every year. So we need to, after Mr. Chris Core's presentation last November, I believe it was, November or December, go back and maybe have a good look at his report as well, and take into consideration some of the ideas that he had that would make it more fiscally attainable, and bring it to the level of what this community. It is quite a gem. Like I say, there's been a lot of time and energy put into it to refurbish it. It needs to go to the next level, and having different kinds of management ideas is great. I think certainly an in-house would be the best, but I'm only one voice, and I really like to hear what the community has to say.
Well, I think that a workshop would be which is of course open to the public, would be good, but Councillor Gray.
Yeah, I want to speak in favor of the motion. I think it's a great idea to get a vision or talk about this together and see where we might go. I note that our strategic plan has in it that we would develop a management and operational plan for the Metchosin Old School site. So it seems to me this is it. But if we start with a vision, overarching view, then the operational plan will fit in, within that. So I see it makes sense. And I'm taking the note from staff. This it's not a difficult question, but it's a real question. Is community use first? Is recreational use first? Is commercial use first? That sort of needs to get sorted out, I guess, and that would be part. I like that because it will get sorted out. We've been asked about considering short term, like what about right now if we don't get all this work done? Maybe this is beyond the motion itself, but I'd say community first, community/recreational and commercial second. That's just my own view. But I take Councillor Donaldson's point of view, which is part of figuring this out. Vision and management plan does include finances. And then I too would support public ownership of this, public running of the school, and so I sort of favor that option of in-house management. But I would look forward to the discussion.
Okay, Marilyn.
I'm also in favor of this motion and moving forward with some kind of strategic framework and long and short-term management of the facility. One of the things that was missing in this report was it didn't mention the training component. So this is an arts and culture center, but also a training facility. And I think any discussion, any visioning regarding the long-term goals, the vision, what the community wants, will have to also take into consideration the training component, that this is an important facility, and we've recently put money into that site towards the training, and I think we should stick by that. I'm also in favor of the option of a community-led committee to manage this school site that would report directly to council, and so that wouldn't be just MACA or just CERC or just groups. It would be a community group, a community action committee for management of that site, and they would be afforded some administrative support, of course, but so I would be in favor of that if would be in fitting with the in-house management. I think it would be great to have a community-led group to manage that, and if it doesn't work, well, in 9 months, 10 months, you could pivot and do something different. So anyways, I'll speak in favor of the motion.
Okay, we did at the previous council, which I mentioned very little will remember, that we did talk about priorities for the gym in particular, and it was and it did bring up the training center. It was as a community facility first, and then recreational, and as well as a training and community. In the case of emergency, a community center in that way. So, and then with the other things below that, so the commercial was kind of below those things, because really it was meant to be a community facility, I think originally when it was purchased. So anyway, if there isn't any more discussion.
Just one more.
Sorry.
Yeah. Just one more thought, and I very much appreciate the presentation by Chris Vandewater and Betty Hildreth on the issue of the arts and culture focus. But at the same time, I think we need to recognize it's bigger than that. As Councillor Schuch has mentioned, there's some commercial operations there. There's the sports side of things. So I'm kind of interested in the vision writ large, and within that is the art and culture piece, but also the other parts that we know of.
Right.
Again, not to down talk one aspect, but just to keep it all open for us as we move to a visioning exercise.
Okay, well now I think I'll call the question. All in favor? And that carries. Thank you. Okay, so we also have another staff report on grant applications, more grant applications, and perhaps Chief Dunlop, can you speak on this?
Good evening again. Yeah, we're just, we've had these same grants over the past, I think, 4 years now. They're the Community Emergency Preparedness Fund through UBCA. And so there's 4 different grants on there. They're all due. One is due here in, I think, about 4 days. And then the other ones are coming through, I think, to February next year. We just need council resolutions for them in application. And if you want to postpone, that's great. The one that we really are short time on is the one that we need to have in the next 4 days. We can process or submit the application without the actual resolution if that's to follow, as long as we have your approval on applying for the funding. For the fire department grant there in particular, the one that's coming up, we're looking to buy some additional equipment, which will hopefully reduce some of our capital expenditures as well. So.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Any questions for the Chief of this? Mayor Little?
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I'm prepared to move the recommendation that council support by way of a resolution grant applications under the UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund and the Community Resilience Investment Fund as summarized below in this report, with thanks to the fire chief for writing grants and bringing money into the community.
Great. Is there a seconder for that?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion?
Quickly.
Okay.
The chipping program, as it was operated, I don't think it ran. Did it run this summer? Okay. We had, and it was fabulous, and we used it last year, and it was amazing. They come in the middle of the night, it disappears. Fantastic.
It is. All right. All in favor? Great. There you go. All right, this is my update, and my apologies for having this verbally instead of all written out as usual. I spent most of last week up in Port McNeill, where my trip for my birthday was a grizzly bear tour, which was really quite amazing. It was like a couple of hours in a boat going up Night Inlet and then into a little estuary on a little tiny aluminum boat, and carrying on. And we did see five grizzly bears, and along with dolphins and porpoises and way too many humpback whales to even begin to count. So it was a very fun trip. All right, so on to and road safety. I'm really pleased to announce through ICBC we are receiving a grant of $7,350 toward a pedestrian activated crosswalk on Rocky Point Road for the Galloping Goose crossing near Mathis Valley. Grant needs to be used by the end of March, so hopefully we can get work done on that as soon as possible. Although currently we only have 2 public works staff, so they're definitely a little stretched. There is progress going on to hire another one, but with holidays and everything. But anyhow, hopefully they'll have some time to get going on there. And we're also going to get an engineering viewpoint on the best place to put a crosswalk between connecting the 2 municipal properties. So, we found that whenever we've had a big event like the Mechosen Community Day or the Ford Car Show, or basically, and the markets, that that people are trying to cross the road gets pretty hairy, scary. So we're going to, but it's a difficult area to figure out exactly where to put the crosswalk that's the safest for everybody. So we're going to be looking at that in the next week or 2. The Fire Hall Steering Committee, we had a meeting, and most of it was discussion about what we heard earlier from Mr. Doyland. And the Mechosen Senior Association, there's a meeting of the Mechosen Caregiver Support Group on Thursday, which apparently is pretty well attended and really helpful to all the people that do go there and share what's going on in their lives. The flu and COVID clinic will be held in the school gym on October 24th and 25th. The monthly Friday social is October 27th at the community house. And Lori Stamen has left the center for her new job with the province. She was a wonderful presence at the center, and we'll really miss her, but we do wish her the best in her new job. So while the MSA searches for a new manager, it'll be open with volunteers and attendance from 1 to 3, Tuesday through Friday. There was a meeting of the Mechosen stakeholders last month. There was representatives from 11 different groups around Mechosen. They're really great meetings with a lot of input from so many different areas of the community. Discussions this time included extreme heat management, summer wildfire risk, winter risks, climate change, the EOC emergency notification test, and Fire Smart. So thanks to Chief Dunlop for keeping the stakeholders groups going.
Councillor, sorry.
Yes, certainly.
What group is this? It's what's it called?
Well, it's the Mechosen. It's the stakeholders meeting. It's 4 times a year,
okay.
right? And it's just gathering together the various, everybody from William Head Prison to Header Bay to the church to the Seniors Association, just together talk about, mostly about emergency planning and issues that they might have, and just coordinating, facilities and supplies and communication.
Okay, thanks, sorry.
And Beecher Bay as well.
Yeah.
That's okay. I also attended a workshop recently called A Hot Topic, Impacts of Extreme Heat. The main focus was understanding vulnerability and how to help the community before, during, and after events. Some of the resources discussed were a health check tool that people can use to know when to call 911. They can just look at this and, if their symptoms show that they need help, and there's another one called a heat alert response system. There was quite a bit. There was a lot of provincial health representatives there, and it was quite interesting because when I was raving about Alma Chosen's emergency things that we have going on here, and it's we're quite a bit ahead of the game as far as most other communities are with all our emergency measures in place. There was a meeting of CREST, which is the Capital Regional Emergency Service Telecommunications, links 50 response agencies and police service. There is going to be a bit of an increase for the next 3 years due to inflation. Other topics in the meeting were negotiations with the CRD, formulating a strategic plan and moving forward with a new building. Last week was a meeting with Dr. Connie Alsop, who is working through BC Healthy Communities on the topic Equity in Action, How Leaders Can Champion Inclusive Policy Making. A webinar set for November 8th dealing with creating health policies through an equity lens, basically asking the question, are voices being heard? And we did attend. Mayor Little, Councillor Gray, and I were at the Forum of All Councils on Saturday, which is basically a forum, the invitation of First Nations and local politicians, other politicians, to promote understanding and reconciliation. I think that's pretty much it. So we also have, for correspondence, we have a letter from Isla Zalak about the crossing at Helgeson and other crossings. And then, of course, the presentations we have. So, at any rate, we will, receive those for information, and I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Okay, moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Councillor Gray. All in favor?
And it does it sign on the shows, right? Yeah, so okay. Yeah, no, I didn't think I did it at the beginning. I was just letting it
Hi. I'm Joshua. I run the music studio across the street. I just couldn't help but notice your microphones are feeding back terribly in the room, and it makes intelligibility really hard, like for people to hear, because there's this high-pitched ringing constantly.
Is it from one feedbacking the other?
It's because the input gain is probably set too high on a few of the mics. Like I noticed your microphone has quite a bit of gain on it. So what happens is it picks up everything it's hearing around the room. It hears the other mics and it hears the sound coming from the speakers again. And that's why you're getting that really, really high-pitched ringing that kind of comes and goes. Well, I can't go as it should be, but it's somewhere in that like 5 to 7K range. So sometimes this might be too close. Yeah, and see, and so that part part of it. So if you had adjustment on these speakers, you could actually take your microphone shouldn't even be like on those two speakers coming back at you, right? They could just be going up to the room. And then the overall gain level should be all set fairly low. And also your mics have latching systems, right? So to turn them on and off between uses, that way if everyone's sort of always off except for when they're speaking, that would greatly reduce that. And that way people, especially for like your live stream and stuff, right? Because if people are listening online, they'll hear that ringing noise and they won't know what it is. Like one of the other ladies was like, was that someone's hearing aid or something? That's a modal ring in the room. So, Anyways,
thank you.
I'd be happy to help you guys with those if you guys ever have sound issues.
Thank you, everyone. Give a shout.
Please join us across the street.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to call the Community Planning Committee meeting for October 16th. I will call this meeting to order. Committee, any comments on the agenda? I have no changes myself or additions other than the pink that we received. We'll do that in correspondence. So, motion to adopt the agenda, Mary Little, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. All in favor? Thank you very much. So we will have a presentation tonight on short-term rentals. Now, what I'd like to do is to do the presentation. We'll go to public participation, and then later in the agenda, there is a place for council to talk about next steps if we so chose. I'm going to pick up a theme from Councillor Epp and just mention that we should decide what action we want from this. And, you know, a typical thing might be we ask staff for a report on options or something we decide to. So, okay, so with that, I will do my presentation. Tina's not here tonight, Ms. Hanson, so I'm going to go as long as I want to. Okay, so short-term rentals in Metchosin. And the reason why we're doing this, it has been an issue in the past, and came to a head in 2018 where residents who were facing disruptions from short-term rentals got your council at that time, and there was a policy change that was made. So, but where it is now, part of the reason is when we wrote a letter to the Housing Minister, Ravi Kahlon, just after the policy statement came out, the Homes for People policy statement, we made a note that Metchosin is in a special case in terms of more dense housing being developed and liberalization, if you will, of zoning requirements. And so one of the things, a few of the things we said with this is we have no sewers. Many of us are in wells, so there's carrying capacity issues there. And we're not well connected to transit, and we're some distance from job centers.
I'm sorry, I just got a text that you can't be heard very well.
Oh, darn it. Okay, I will sit down. Thank you. Okay, yeah, darn. Okay, thanks very much. Not really, yeah. Okay, so with that, we also said that we would look at rural housing policies, including how we dealt with short-term vacation rentals. And so this is part of it. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so here's what we're going to do in terms of the review of the presentation. So the broader context of STRs, background on Metchosin's approach, an outline on what is known about STRs in Metchosin, and review action from other jurisdictions, and also some discussion points. Now I have to say, if you had an earlier version of this presentation, please throw it in the ground, drive over it 3 times, and then put it in the wastebasket. This is an updated presentation that, based on some information that I've received over the weekend and just over the last few days, and of course there's a big announcement today as well. Okay, so what are short-term rentals? Typical, we all know what they are. We probably all stayed in them. So it's a rental of a home or a room or an accessory building for stays of less than 30 days. There are 2 big platforms, as everyone knows: Verbo, vacation rental by owner, which is called, and Airbnb. Airbnb started in 2007. The story is a bit famous, how these people in San Francisco had a room, they realized that they could rent it out, and that took off from there. So one thing, the concerns, but key thing here, there was a significant focus on STRs being in the context of a principal residence, your principal residence, and this has come up a number of times in this presentation. So many of the concerns have come because it has moved beyond that, and there are now commercial operators who are buying. The stories are legion about people who buy up whole floors of apartment buildings and lease them out. These are called ghost hotels, and people who buy homes and also rent them out as well. So clearly they are not their principal residents, but they're finding STRs are big business. Okay, so the concern about STRs, and globally, this is not a Vancouver Island problem or a BC problem, it is a global problem. And STRs have proliferated during a time of increasingly more expensive and less available long-term rentals. And we are now clearly in a crisis within the country as well. And so here's a quote from, there's a study group at McGill, and they've done reports on many jurisdictions, including British Columbia. They did one in 2022, and then also updated that just this last summer. Again, they say the pattern is clear. Neighborhoods with higher prevalence of commercial short-term rentals have higher rents. One of the things they point out is that if there had not been rentals, STRs, renters probably would have saved upwards of $2 billion from, I think the date was 2018 or something like that. So what these researchers found is that there's something in the order of almost 17,000 housing units as of July 2023 that have been taken off the long-term rental market because of short-term vacation rentals. So
just in BC.
Just in BC, yeah. Okay. And one of the things they found out as well, is they believe they have, is that provincially the STR market is dominated by large commercial enterprises. And they say that 10% of the owners make something like 40% of the profits. So that's, again, it's moved from that principal residence, individuals, to a big business, essentially. Okay, so chosen and short-term rentals. Okay. So again, rules for the first time were introduced in 2018, and this is just an excerpt from a staff report that came in 2017. But as I recall, the big issue back in 2018 was not anything to do with increase in rents or lack of long-term rentals. It was concern that came with noise, multiple families staying in certain homes, and the disruption that went along with that. And these were rampant problems that had been going on for a number of years, and those residents finally got the ear of council, and there was a change. So here's what the STR regulation looks like right now, not chosen. So there's a definition, again, the business of a rental, a legal dwelling unit, or a portion of for a period of less than 30 consecutive days, including to a maximum of 4 boarders. Sorry, spelled that wrong. One thing that's interesting here, there's no reference to principal residence in this actual definition, so that might be something we look at. So only one family is permitted in an STR. Business license is mandatory. It's a small fee of $35 annually. Must provide 24/7 contact or the property manager to be given to neighbors. There's a good neighbor brochure that must be in the STR, and there must be parking as well. One thing that's interesting is you must include a business license number on the marketing material, including on the STR site as well. Interesting, when I went and did my search, I don't recall seeing any business license numbers. So that, interestingly, it should change here. So again, so the regulations were changed, but the question might be asked is, was there enforcement? Because I was even hearing as early as 2022, last year, that there's still concerns with noise, disruption, multiple families being in an STR, and also parking as well. So again, the question is, we have the regulations, is there enforcement of them? Okay, so here's some information. So at present, there are 12 business licenses issued for STRs. Okay, but there are clear signs that they're are more STRs in Metchosin than 12. Now, the question though is how many? So this is a screenshot from a company called, it's an online company called AirDNA. And so it's actually a site that's used by people who want to get into the Airbnb or Vrbo business. So they can check out their area, they can check out what the market is, they can check out are there other STRs out there. This one interestingly says 44 STRs. Elsewhere on the site, in Metchosin, elsewhere on the site it says something like 61. A resident, when I was doing the report and who saw an early draft, said there's at least 40, and she gave me a list of those. So it's the exact number is really hard to pinpoint, but it's clearly more than 12. So you can sign up to AirDNA, and you can have a look at the map. I spent time today, I think I counted 55. Maps it out fairly clearly. You got to be careful though that you're not counting the homes in Langford and Colwood as well, because they escalate in terms of the number of them and the density of them in certain areas, which are actually right alongside, which shows an interesting thing. So again, there are many more than 12, it seems, in Metchosin. So, just a really quick run through. The site says that the average rental income is over $60,000. Daily average rent is over $260. And according to the site, most of the STRs in Metchosin are for entire homes. So that's what the site says. It probably does, the data probably does deserve a little bit more scrubbing in terms of what we know locally. So, but you think we have a problem. So there's a lot of STRs in the CRD, and you can just see the list here. Interesting Souk has quite a number. Be interesting to know relative to population, because look, it's ours probably relative to population is actually quite high. Okay, so as you probably heard today, there was an announcement by the province on regulation of short-term vacation rentals. Here's basically what they proposed. This will be coming in legislation this fall, and the changes are scheduled to take place next year. So here's the big one. STRs can only be offered in the principal residence of the host. That could include a secondary suite or a laneway house. And so that's, I think, what the government is really going to be cracking down on, is corporate ownership of STRs, buying up whole floors. Almost there. But interestingly, it will be the local government too that does the enforcement, but we've been given new tools to do that. So they're new. The fines are going to be raised, and they can be paid per day. The total fines have increased. You can read here. Big thing is a registration, and this is mandatory, and it will give local governments in time the information they need to fully understand who's operating an STR in their jurisdiction. So again, to me, the two big things are crackdown and clarity that it's only a principal residence, and then information, good information that will come to the local government as well. So unfortunately, it's probably not until next year that we actually see that. So, okay. I'll just run through really quickly
Can I just say, if you're going to address this, I heard on television coverage that the new announcement was only for municipalities.
Thanks.
Of
Yeah.
10,000 or more population.
So it is, but if you're within 15 kilometers of a major population center, that this does apply. You're also in, and Metchosin is specifically named as one of those localities that this does apply to.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So really quickly, Victoria. They're really annoyed at STRs. I talked with some of the councillors, and they go almost white and nod their heads in terms of the action that they're going to be underway. So it says on average, from what I heard from, again, the McGill study, from 2018 to 2022, almost 80% of the listings active each day in Victoria have been frequently rented entire home listings for ghost hotels. Again, this goes back to the principal residence. So if you're renting the entire house, chances are it's not your principal residence, somebody else owns it. And so here we have all the things that council has directed staff to come back to. So more fines, greater challenges for people who are non-principal residences in terms of getting into the system. But now the province has actually cut that avenue out for people. So, Vancouver, there's, again, as you can expect, a lot of STRs there now. They voted this summer to increase the business license fee from $109 to $1,000. And again, the regulations that were introduced a number of years ago, it's principal residence, and they make it very specific that investment properties cannot be STRs. Interesting thing, both Vancouver and Victoria have huge staffs in terms of managing their STR groups. Tofino. I just want to mention Tofino. So in 2016, they decided that they were going to actively enforce their regulations. And so they voted to make a requirement for a business license, and STRs could only operate in the zones that they were allowed to. And so they gave owners time to comply, come get your business license, make sure you're operating in the right zones, and then they began to enforce. And there was a group of STR owners at the time who said, no, we believe we have a legal non-conforming, an STR can be a legal non-conforming use in our buildings. And the administration said, no, you can't get a license for that. The property owners took Tofino to court, and big long cases these things are, and Tofino's position on STRs and their ability to enforce was upheld. And so those residents, they were not allowed to run their STRs, had to pay court costs, and Tofino's approach was essentially vindicated. One crazy story though, there's still issues there. I ran into somebody recently, and she said her property had been sold. It was going to become short-term rental with the sale, and she began her notice in terms of how to find a new place to move. So there's still issues out there for sure. Okay, just a few more slides. Quebec, I put this in before today's announcement, just to highlight the fact that that's what they do in Quebec, is the province makes sure that there is a registry of property owners with STRs, and that information goes to local governments, and then those local governments, they make the decisions on how to enforce. Okay. So, questions. What should Metchosin do? Nothing. Stronger enforcement. Higher business fees. Or even prohibit. And the one thing to keep in mind is that local governments do have control over what businesses they can license in their jurisdictions, and also zoning control as well. So, here we go. I'll leave. Well, we'll have a discussion afterward, but here's some of the sources I pulled out. The McGill studies are quite interesting. They're pretty detailed in certain places, but yeah, easy to read in other places. Okay, so that's the presentation. I almost got it in 10 minutes. And we'll now go to public participation. Thank you. Yeah. Your name? Beth?
Beth Bacon, chosen resident. And an interesting Airbnb topic, but that's not what I'm going to talk about. And I like the notion put forward of the questions that Councillor Shukin had about proof of water. And that's what I'd like to talk to, and you have my letter. I believe you have my letter. And this is standards for proof of water for subdivision approval. I believe that Councillor Shukin poses some important questions in his Councillor's update for the October 16th planning meeting. And Councillor Shukin points out that we have no specifications for the procedure and standard used to prove water. I too would like clarification on how and when testing is done, the current and projected state of our aquifer, and how the potential threat to neighboring wells is considered when approving new wells. Let's make this process transparent and compatible with new information about water resources as it becomes available. And I think I've said before, I was just so proud of our council who showed up for everything water in the Highlands with Gord Baird. So I know you're getting educated as I'm just trying to get educated on water. I think it's a central issue for us right now. And I'm wondering if council would like to invite Gord Baird to come and do a chosen presentation. And I think there'd be other people here that would like to get up to speed on this topic. There was lots to digest there. I would like to sit through it again and I'd get more out of it a second time. And one of the exciting developments that I've learned in Everything Water that is that we can get a 3D chart of the aquifer, where the water is and where the water isn't. And they're doing that, as you'll recall, from ground penetrating radar, like finding buried bodies. But you can find where the water is and isn't, get a 3D chart, and that would be so informative for us, but I think it costs. And I don't know, I did ask Gord Baird, and I would be making it up if I quoted it now. I thought it was something like $10,000 or something like that, but I could be quite off. But if they've got that state-of-the-art advantage, and it would be very cool if we could find the money to have that state-of-the-art advantage. Councillor Shukin also brings up that you know, some wells are approved because they had water in December and January, you know, but what do they have for water in the summer months? And what is the impact on neighbors of more wells? I think these questions are good questions, and we should have the answers to them. So the old groundwater, she ain't what she used to be. And if you look at the chart, it's page 3 of Councillors' update in the agenda package, I find it quite alarming. And I don't know, Councillor Shukin, you could tell me if I'm getting it right, but my interpretation of the chart, it looks like our groundwater is about 10 meters lower than it used to be. And that's, of course, we're dealing with averages, but does anybody have a different understanding of that chart? And so if the district, the option B, if you do option A, I hope you get Gord Baird here. Option B, I'd love it if you get the 3D picture of our aquifer. And option C, the last thing, is if you're not going to do the 3D chart of our groundwater, could we have more test wells? Because we're making, our information I think comes from one test well. And when I asked Gord Baird about this, he said that a test well needs to only be 6 inches in diameter. So that shouldn't be a huge thing. And it can be on public or private property. And thank you for considering this.
Thank you, Beth. Nicole first.
Nicole Shukin, I'm the Bond Road resident. I just want to echo what Bev said. I also really like the recommendations around proof of water. And I also want to talk about the, the approval of the stormwater management plan, or the detention ponds. It strikes me that what should be expected from the developers is like a simulation. Like, I'm hoping there will be a visual that actually shows what the detention pond will look like and what the plantings and so on will look like. And so I'm just really hoping that the district will not approve anything before we, like a 21st century simulation or really like high quality visual of the detention pond is included in the plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Nicole.
I've got the routine down. Block Burgess, 3837 Duke Road. Usually I forget that. I must be one of the 12 registered.
Fantastic.
I think it was the first one, actually.
Okay.
And I'm pleased that I didn't realize you could find how many unlicensed ones there were. I knew there were a few around. I'm surprised by that number. We run ours as a bed and breakfast, self-catering. We're always on site, and I never had a complaint yet. And I hope that I'm really kind of encouraged by the provincial government's stance. I think this is a good thing. And I'd like it to go back to what it was a few years ago, where it was you had one or two people in a house, and you managed it. So that was all I wanted to say.
Great. Thanks very much, Bob. Just to be clear, it's not so much a matter of finding the unlicensed ones, but the discrepancy between the licenses we have and the number, of course, shows most are not licensed. So, yeah. And I bet, again, the one thing to emphasize is no one's trying to end short-term rentals, but they want them run properly. Sounds like you run yours properly.
Okay.
So, okay. Thank you.
Not that tall. Joanna Nansfeld, Sandgate Road. I would just like to thank Jay for all the work he's done into this as somebody impacted our neighborhood by we're Bruce Beach, so we're very dense. 3 very noisy, long-term, short-term rentals, who one of them averages close to $800 a night. I know there's rules, none of them have been enforced ever. They don't have a license because you just tore it up and threw it away. So I'd like you for your effort. We're concerned because of our location and a lot of older people. Every time the house gets sold, it could become a short-term rental. And you said, we have one, its owner. Family owns it, but they don't live there, they rent it out. So that goes against principal residents. They just go couch surfing. So, but it is, if you live with it, it is a harassment. Anyway, and thank you.
Thanks. Okay, any more for public participation? Okay, so hearing none, we'll keep going with the agenda. Okay, so the next item is the adoption of the Community Planning Committee meeting of September 11th. Any comments? Councillor Grant?
I'll move adoption.
Councillor Green and Councillor Rapp, seconds. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, that's carried. Receipt of minutes. We have the Bufferland Working Group meeting of September 12th.
The receipt.
Councillor Rapp and Councillor Donaldson. Any discussion? Hearing none. Move receipt. Okay, pass. Thank you very much. The Parks and Trails Advisory Committee of September 19th, and I'll have a few comments about this once during my councilor's update. And a question actually for the committee as well. So any comments on the PTAS minutes? Hearing none, motion to receive. Mayor Little and Councillor Donaldson. And then finally, the Bufferland Working Group Committee input session of October 4th, and the notes from that session. I'll briefly mention that in my councilor's update as well. Moved by Councillor Donaldson for receipt, and seconded by Mayor Little. All in favor? Yeah, thank you very much. Okay. Reports. So if you go to page 29, we will have the staff report on the STR regulations. Sorry, page 29. And this is basically background from when the issue was discussed in 2017, 2018. And I've gone through what the regulations were at that time. Now, if the committee is okay, I'd like to have our discussion about what we might do with STRs in the chosen. And I talked and done my spiel in terms of the presentation. Any further comments on this? Councillor?
Well, I think after going through the provincial report today, it's pretty comprehensive and it really covers a lot of the things that we've been concerned about. So I don't know if we need to adopt that or it's just there. What we would, if we have any input into what we do with that.
Yeah. Well, that is a great question. And I think the question I would have is if we have a bylaw that doesn't, and all this is contained within the business bylaw. So if we have that information in the business bylaw and it's not, consistent with what the provincial regulations will be, what does that mean? We have some time to get it fixed up, I guess, but that's a question first. And the key one being is I don't know if we're really entirely clear of a principal residence in a business bylaw. It's been a week or so since I've gone back and looked at it, but that would be something to look at. So. Oh, sorry, Councillor.
Well, I just wonder, the big announcement today really makes a difference to everything. Yeah. So what I was going to say before I saw that was, gee, let's do a little bit more study about the numbers. Now you've discovered many more than we initially had in our notes. So that's the start of that. And then let's see what the province has got. I wonder if the province, they're seemingly pretty serious about the housing issues. And so I expect they will impose bylaws. Otherwise, it'll take forever for all the different municipalities to bring in bylaws. So they may well, have a model set that are just brought in force. I don't know, but I read through it today, and I really appreciate the presentation. And I think now it's time for some thinking and coming back to it. It's hard to put it all together just having read about it today and all of these notes, which were all helpful, by the way. I've been concerned about the nuisance questions. I heard about that before, during the election time, particularly the Weirs Beach situation, but then also the question of the impact on housing. At first, when I thought, there's only 17, and I guess there's not that many. 44 is starting to lift, getting the interest going in terms of the housing question, but it may well be that the provincial regulations will then sort of set us up for that. I guess the question I'll have in the end will be, you mentioned it, we'd be in charge of enforcement, and what additional costs that will have for us, but we just wait and see, I suppose.
Yeah, and with the additional costs, I think that's one of the reasons Vancouver upped their costs from 109 to 1,000. I remember listening to that on CBC, and that is to cover things like enforcement. And as what Councillor Gray was saying about the Weirs Beach neighborhood and the challenges they've had for a number of years, it just boggles my mind that the landlord is not on site. If you're going to have an Airbnb and host it, especially in this lovely community, I think that's one thing we should really consider is making sure that is corrected, that the landlord is actually on site. And the fact that there are some properties that have more than one Airbnb is another thing that we'll have to manage somehow. And the licensing, our licensing is pretty inexpensive and has not been updated in many, many years for all sorts of different businesses. But the Weirs Beach neighborhood, it's basically gone to a commercial operation in that little neighborhood. It's something we definitely need to address, and I'm sure there's other situations that we are not totally aware of, and clearly you've uncovered a few more things. So yeah, this is timely. I really appreciate what the province has brought down today.
Yeah. Marilyn?
Thank you. Yeah, I was pleased to see what the province said today. So I noted that the fines for hosts breaking rules would be increased from 1,000 to 3,000 per day. And so if you have a sufficient bylaw with some teeth in it, we could enforce it. And the province has set these guidelines out, and and I don't think they could be challenged in a court situation. The principal residence is an important piece, plus one secondary suite or detached unit. The primary residence piece, and as you say, we can be included in that. It's up to the municipality within a radius of the populations of 10,000. So we tick all the boxes. We've had significant letters from residents, particularly in the Weir Beach area, that they haven't been listened to in the past, and I think we should move on moving forward. And I'm just wondering, what are the next steps? Councillor Shukun, should we ask the planner to come back with a report for amendments to bylaw 647, including fees and fines? Is that where you're going with this? I think the time is ripe with the province coming down with this. I think this is the time for us. And as you stated, we did tell Minister Cowan that we were going to have this discussion and make some changes to it. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. There are three pillars that I could see in terms of topics to maybe ask staff to come back for more information. One is a recommendation on fees in terms of the annual business license fee. The other one is around enforcement. So not only you pay a fine if you don't pay your business license fee, but then also if you're operating an illegal Airbnb. And then the other question I have is the consistency part in terms of what our bylaw says and where the province is going. We should actually see some text from the province in the coming weeks because it's going to be introduced in the legislature. So those three things, and there's probably others as well. But I have to say the things in terms of enforcement that always get me going is if the environment is being harmed and if neighbors are being impacted. And I would like to see an enforcement campaign underway next year when the rules are set with the province, and making sure that those who have STRs are the people who actually should have them. And of course, one of the interesting things is that if you have somebody who's a non-principal owner and suddenly they find that they can't run the STR, they're either going to sell the place or turn it into ideally a long-term rental. So that's part of one of the hopeful outcomes of this. And especially in a bigger place like Victoria, that's very much what they're counting on. So any further comments? I have a motion I might make.
Yeah, just not anxious to waste staff time if the province is coming to legislation, the week after next. We can get a look at that, and that would inform the activities. I mean, it's a big topic, and it's not going away, and lots is coming towards it, I expect.
Yeah, that might be fair enough. What I was going to, I can hold, that might actually be a good thing to do, subject to your thoughts. But I was going to make a motion to request a report from staff in terms of fees, the consistency issue, and then enforcement. Actually, you know what? I feel like we could probably make it now, pending the release of the legislation and the regulations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't we do that? I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Spiller, you're okay. Great. Seconded by Mayor Little. Discussion.
Can you just get the motion again? Sorry.
So the motion is that council directs staff to return with a report about the consistency issue in terms of our bylaw and provincial legislation and regulation, recommendations on fees, business license fees, and recommendation on enforcement. And that this be done following the release of more information from the provincial government. Good.
Just a question. So you're talking about consistency between our bylaw 647 and the provincial legislation. Is that what you're talking? So that they match and Right, okay,
Yeah.
I see what you
And
mean.
again, the big thing was the clarification on the principal, the fact that it has to be a principal residence. And it may be there, but I seem to recall it's not. So just getting that consistent would be good. So there's no loopholes for, yeah.
And they also talk about the remaining legal non-conforming rules as well, which I think would be great to have information on that, as well as the primary residence, principal residence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. And I think that's all within the realm of, again, consistency. So, yeah. Okay. Further comments? Hearing none, call the question. All in favor? And none of those. Thank you very much. Carried. Okay. Okay. Councillor Suckett. So the Bufferland Working Group held its second community information session. Big thanks to Councillor Donaldson for chairing that session as I was incapacitated. And we had a bunch of great input from the community and some new ideas, which we kind of wish would have come a little earlier, but that's okay. We're processing them right now. One of the issues that was put out to the working group was the potential of carbon credits from the bufferland. And I have made some inquiries into the Coastal Douglas Fir Conservation Partnership to learn more about the realities of that. And so what I understand is there's can be a significant upfront cost in terms of verifying the actual asset you have. I've heard something in the order of sometimes it's hundreds of thousands of dollars to actually verify that, but the potential for credits, if it's that much, might be millions of dollars. I have a hard time thinking we're going to see that with the bufferland. It's only 100 acres. The voluntary carbon offsets schemes that I've heard of, they involve big tracts of land, 40,000 hectares, which is over 100,000 acres. So, but the people at the Conservation Partnership, they were keen about the project. So I think they're going to get back to us with, again, testing the realities of that. So, yeah. The goal of the working group is to have a report filed so it can be on council's agenda next week. And we've made a lot of progress on that, and we have to get it filed for Wednesday. So thank you for your comments, Councillor Donaldson. Okay. And again, and a big thanks to the working group members. So Bonnie Hoover, Brian Grant, Anna Hall, Karen Hoffman, Richard Simpson, Gary Smurfett, and Bailey Spiteri, and Councillor Johnson, and a great group of people, and everyone has just worked really well together. So, okay, so next item is an information request and policy direction around proof of water. Now, I'll apologize to Ms. Tarnowski if I've come off half-cocked on this, but as I reviewed the subdivision servicing bylaw, there's nothing specific in terms of how you prove water. There's a minimum standard there, which is 3,400 liters a day, which as I figured it works out to about half a US gallon flow rate, which is, that's not great, but it can keep you going. Now, what we've also seen, it's anecdotal, but quantitative too, in terms of the number of times you see the water truck traveling through Metchosin. That just has increased. I've talked to the water truck guys personally, and they just know that Metchosin has become an increasingly growing customer. And again, Bev was pointing out the table at the last part here, and it clearly shows a decline in the water table. And what you're seeing in the green line, if you flip over, is the blue is the general range, but the green line is the historic daily mean, which again, that incorporates data over time. The red line is the current reading. So there's a significant drop. What I'm concerned about and would like to see a specific policy on is how we test and verify that there is actually proof of water. And again, easy thing to do in the rainy months, but what do you have in the summer months? And so what I've put forward here is a motion that talks about developing a policy and procedure for proving water in new subdivisions. And any of your comments, I can support the motion, or somebody else can. Any comments? Sorry.
So Councillor Sugar, if I may suggest, instead of making it a policy, we still have the subdivision servicing bylaw that has been amended, hasn't been adopted, that we hire a professional consultant who can speak or help us with the language of not writing or specifying a particular amount, quantity, because that will change. Or rather than doing that, we'll reference a standard that, whatever standard that the profession uses, so that we include that in the bylaw. It says we'll test according to this acceptable standard. Okay. That's going to be part of the bylaw, which is obviously going to be stronger than a policy.
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel that would be interesting to do. For some reason, I feel like a policy fits this, though, and again, subject to your thoughts. And a policy, to me, it can be passed much more quickly and can be adapted, which can also be a negative sometimes. Yeah. Committee, any further thoughts? Councillor.
Yeah, I think it's a very important question, approving the wells. What I wasn't sure of was, do we have an operational standard at the moment? In other words, do we always test them, at the end of the summer? In other words, it says it must be proved to the satisfaction of the municipal engineer. So how is the municipal engineer satisfied? It may not be a policy, it may just be what our practice is, and I just don't know what that is. So anyway, just some clarity on that question would be helpful. I think it's terribly important that the proof of wells be done in a way that will provide water for the person who's got the lot, but has least impact on the neighbors. Mm-hmm. And so when I looked at it, I was initially thinking, well, maybe it's a staff report we need. Like, can you fill that in here? That this is a list of interesting things, but what are the items that we need to have in a bylaw? So what are the elements of the policy, and what might they be? When I looked at the dry months, for example, I'm not expert in it, but I would think not testing in May, but more like we would be testing in September at the end of the dry season, not the beginning. But I don't know what the usual practices are. But I certainly support the idea of us getting a handle on this if we don't already have a standard practice.
So, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, I like the idea of getting a consultant, but I'm wondering if there's other jurisdictions, other districts that have already done the work on this, and that we could be guided by, not in favor of reinventing the wheel, when we don't have to, maybe cost effective to look to other jurisdictions to see what they've done. But certainly we need to get a handle on this. I would also be in favor of petitioning the province for an additional observation well. And that I think that would, a motion tonight to that effect would be really nice, so that we could send a letter. If I'm not mistaken, an additional observation well was promised. And I think they should follow through on their promises. That would really help with gathering metrics. So I haven't done any research myself on different jurisdictions, but I'm sure somebody within BC has done this legwork. Mm-hmm. It'd be great to be able to be guided by that.
Okay. So, Mayor Little, is that a motion from you that we send a letter to the provincial government, the right parties, requesting
a petition for an additional observation well for Aquifer 606?
Okay. Mayor Little has made a motion. Any?
I'll second that.
Okay. Councillor Jones, second. Any discussion on that? Councillor Craig?
Do we need 1, 2, 3, 4? How many? This aquifer is enormous. And I think when we went to the meeting in Highlands, there were numerous observation wells, I guess a smaller aquifer. So maybe we could get to whatever the standard would be for this size. The province promised it previously. In what context? I wonder. Mayor Little, is that?
I can't remember. I really can't remember. It was from the Aquifer 606 water day that we had in 2019, so I can't remember specifics. I'd be happy with one additional one.
Yeah.
But if we could get additional observation wells, plural, that would be great too.
And I think there's a way of crafting the letter so that, you know, again, we know we need more information on this. We know it's changing, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on how to get more information.
There was a well on Arden Road inactive since 2006, but there is a drilled provincial observation well there that could be reactivated.
Okay. Yep.
So I'm in favor of the motion. It was just a question of wells plural possibly is the need.
Yeah. No, and that is true. We saw that with the Beckingham, the information that came from the Beckingham folks, that they referenced the well in Arden Road that had been decommissioned. So, okay. So I think a letter to the provincial government requesting more information or another well at the very least, but yeah. Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Okay. Now, can I ask Ms. Tarnowski again, any thoughts on where we should go with this? And I mean, I'm happy to make it a bylaw if that works, if it's expedient and we're not talking about it a year from now.
I would strongly suggest that we put it as part of bylaw, really twofold. One is that we have a amended bylaw that's been sitting for several years, that still awaiting adoption. And also that it'll be stronger than a policy and bylaw, and we'll make sure that it's very difficult to challenge. And also to again, going back to my reference of not putting a specific quantity, because standards change all the time. We don't want to be amending the bylaw constantly to update the quantity, but just really referencing the standard of whatever professional acceptable standard is for water.
Follow-up question. So you mentioned there was a bylaw that has been waiting to be amended or passed?
Yeah, the subdivision servicing bylaw.
Okay.
There's been an amendment to it.
Oh, okay.
For at least 3 years now.
Oh, wasn't aware. Okay, sounds good. Okay. I feel like a motion is okay, Ms. Tarnowski, one more time. I think a staff report might be worth putting in, because I think we have to iron out some of the details.
So can you clarify that staff report for the staff report for?
Well, I think we're looking at what sort of detail we would put into the bylaw, and also back to what Mayor Little was saying, going out and seeing what other jurisdictions have done. And I think we also have to keep in mind that we might want to do our own thing as well. So in I did talk with Councillor Baird about what Highlands does, and they actually have I believe they have a 72-hour pump test. So that means you're running the well for 3 days to verify the water. Anyways, he kind of rolled his eyes in horror about the amount of water used. But so is that our standard? Again, when is the testing done? As I understand it, it used to be done whenever the developer felt they could do it. And I just, we're in a different environment now, so that the time I think is really crucial. So, Councillor Craig,
Would you like a motion for a staff report?
please.
So I would move that we ask for a staff report on best practices for improving water in new subdivisions in preparation for revising the subdivision servicing bylaw.
Okay. Thank you very much.
If someone seconds it, I'm going to say one word to it. You'll second it? Yeah, so then I think where we could do is include what Mary Little's talked about, which is checking other places where they're doing.
Yeah.
Caution on that, but for sure, check that out. And then look at specific amendments.
Yeah.
And I think we've got a nice list here to work from in your note.
Okay.
Also, since we're doing it with other bylaws as well, we should pass this by our legal counsel just to make sure it's foolproof. Since we're doing it with all the other bylaws, and I like the idea that this is a bylaw as opposed to a policy. It has more teeth as a bylaw.
Gotcha. Okay. Further discussion on this motion from Councillor Gray, seconded by Councillor App, and call the question. All in favor? Thank you very much. Okay, final item on my report is the meeting of the Parks and Trails Advisory Committee of September 19th, and I did this by phone while I was at UBCM. A question for the committee, and Mark Atherton, who's the chair of PTAS, asked me to ask you specifically. There has been a request for a new roadside trail on Duke Road East. This is essentially along Duke Road East, all the way from where east becomes west, and then all the way up to the Chosen Road. Mark believes that there is significant potential to do this, and there is a lot of neighbor and resident support for this. Jeanette McMillan has got a petition together, and I think she's got something about 150 names. So people who are interested in this, and also who have said, and we'll hold them to this, that they will also help maintain the trail as well. So the question that Mark has asked is, any comments from the planning committee? Do you oppose it? Do you think it has potential? Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, and I mentioned the history of that section. If you actually spoke, I'm surprised Mark doesn't know this, but from Duke Road East, that's coming this way on Chosen Road, there is a roadside trail. There is cloth down. There was $9,000 worth of gravel screenings put down. Mr. Harold Palkin was part of putting that in. What you can see now is a lovely shoulder of gravel screenings. So it's, all the organic matters there and stuff like that. So are these neighbors looking for something that's separate from the road boulevard area, like something that's delineated? Because we already have put taxpayers' dollars and a lot of labor has gone into that. So it is walkable, it's very wide. It did stop at one point because there's some pretty curvy turns, just where there's a trail that goes through now, affectionately known as the Dunn Trail, that goes right towards Chapel Heights. But I would be mindful of not spending more money when we don't need to. So what exactly is it they're looking for? Are they looking for something that's more designated, or?
Yeah, well, there was a recognition that there are parts of that area that are suitable and ready to go almost as a roadside trail, and then other parts that need some work. So what Mr. Atherton was going to do was, pending no big objections from us, he was going to do a bit of a feasibility report or plan, and then actually bring that back to PTAS in terms of assessing priorities, and of course it would come to council in terms of budget. So there's a bit of a step toward that. PTAS might have, I think, some budget in terms of what the park maintenance, what the trail maintenance budget is, but they won't have time to do anything with it this year, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah. Now, thanks, Councillor Johnson. I mean, I vaguely remember this and vaguely remember the talk. So let me bring that back to Mark. It'd be great if maybe he talked to you,
He could, or he could talk to one of the previous coordinators that was involved with it.
Okay, sounds like a good plan. Yeah, it was only brought up quite vaguely, so I'm not fully sure if people know the work that has been previously underway.
So another question, this particular neighbor organization, I guess they're quite well organized and have put a lot of thought into things. They have different sections of trail networks that they kind of wanted to link some of the trails. There's quite a few trails over that area. One of the critical ones, and I think it was Jeanette that actually came in and spoke at the podium on public participation, was right on Duke Road near where she lives, and there isn't a lot of room there. So is that a priority over the other one, or which ones are they actually looking at as first, second, and third sort of priorities?
This one seems to be amongst the priorities. This is all of the neighbors seem to be behind this one. It's an interesting group because there's a Duke Road East Trail group, then there's the Albert Head group, and some of them are together doing both. So yeah, it's yeah.
Okay.
I just there's just a lot of areas where we've talked about adding trails. There's the Hans Helgeson one along there, and as well as this, and I mean the more the better, so we can manage to fund them. But one thing that really does come up, it certainly has come up with the Paris Road Trail, is the maintenance. And I just say the residents, say, well, they would maintain it, but they said that trail as well. I think, for the district, we don't have the public works staff that continue to maintain more and more roadside trails. It's a lot of hours. So I think council is something council needs to look at, and along with approving more investigation into adding more trails is exactly how we're prepared financially to maintain them.
Yeah, it's a great point. Councillor Johnson.
On that, and thank you, Councillor, for bringing up the one near the school there. That's critical. We also have on the books improvement of a section of trail in the Machosen Park, and it keeps getting stalled because of one particular neighbor. This is a safety issue. We're getting into the rainy, muddy season now, and it's the safety issue. As an equestrian, we stop riding in the muddy areas for obvious reasons, just erosion and again, safety. But for people who hike through there or run through there, it gets very slippery and muddy. This is a section, and you are aware of the area I'm speaking of. It is also, the roots are getting more and more exposed, and if we don't deal with it, those trees will become unearthed. Mm-hmm. So I implore us to look at the priority of dealing with what we've got in front of us first. Mm-hmm. That is a safety factor. It was last term we were even talking about this. I don't know why it's taking so long for us to deal with this. I know PTAS is on board with it, and we need to start prioritizing some things. Clearly, we have a strategic plan, and Councillor has just referenced some of the important parts of that. Before we start doing other ones, we need to clear up some of our trail to-do lists, and that's one that really needs to be addressed soon. I did see something in the minutes, I think, of the PTAS about that. I'm not sure where we are and why it's still stalled.
Yeah, I just really quickly will address that. Yeah, there was, I don't know if I'd call it a confrontation, probably would, where a PTAS member was out putting gravel on the trail. The landowner came out and the work stopped. Now what PTAS has asked, and Suman, I'm just trying to see, I need to make sure that you have this, but if there is such an encounter again, like PTAS members will back off and they will ask the public works crew to do the work. So that we think is appropriate. We're volunteers as opposed to paid staff, and we can take measures as we need to in terms of dealing with the landowner. So yeah, so that's was the request to PTAS. But they very much know it is something that needs to be done. We know the landowner's position, but we've also heard many other complaints as well, more so than his complaint that the work is actually being done. So, okay. So, but to the question of Duke Road, but Councillor.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I think it's a great idea, and it's kind of very nice that the local residents have brought it forward in the way they have, and that PTAS has taken a look at it. By the way, I noticed the amount of volunteer hours at PTAC. That's incredible. So big thanks to them. But when I sort of remember the discussion we had, and I looked back in the minutes, and I guess the motion didn't exactly say this, but I was thinking that PTAS would look at this proposal, which included this Duke Road Trail, but also the Mechosin Connector Trail, and give us some idea of the master plan.
Yeah.
How does this fit? In other words, is this the next one or the one after? And I'm speaking really to Councillor Johnson's point, I think, about the priority. So I'm super keen, but I'd like to be sort of feel like, yeah, within the plan, this is where we're going next. On the other hand, if Mark, the chair of the committee, is saying, well, I just want authority, are you interested enough to take a look and give us some ideas? I would say certainly, but I'd like to come back to us with some idea of within the master plan, how's that fit?
Yeah.
Not negative, just how would you order it? And I'm hearing about that one particular fix that needs to be done that we already know about. But then also Councillor Epps raised these other places. So I'm not at all negative, but just wanting to sort out the order in which things should be done.
Yeah.
And then the other thing would be, I've driven along, of course, the road there, and wondering about, is the land all there? Or do we need to, are we encroaching on people's properties, that sort of thing? There looks like difficult spots, and I guess that's what the feasibility would be looking at. A lot to say. I'd like to see it nested in a bigger question.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. This is really great input, and good on Mark for asking, because it's, yeah. And best of all, you can actually watch your comments through the YouTube channel. But I will be in touch with Mark, and he probably, I'm sure he's aware of the work that has been done before, and I probably just missed it. But it might be good for a refresher just to, make sure where things are at. Okay, thank you very much. I just go through, as I mentioned, next point is discussions on continuing with the Albert Head Group. One thing that the PTAS will have several members opening up this year, and this is a really hands-on group, and so there was a request that if new applications come in, that PTAS get a chance to maybe vet them, just make sure they know. So, and PTAS had a booth at Mechosin Day. I didn't get a chance to hang out all that much, but I think it was quite successful. The Parks for Nation guidelines are being updated. I think they're almost done. Ideally, one of the successes that our Trails Coordinator, Ryan Carter, will have is a memorial bench that should be ready to be installed. And this is along Duke Road, actually, as well. So that I think has cleared almost all the hurdles and is just ready for public works support when they're able to. So the PTAS folks went out and they identified the boundaries of Sea Spray, Graceland Pocket Parks. As to what happens to these parks, that remains to be seen. The Albert Head folks did say they were interested in rejuvenating them, and to me that's work that they can do. It'd be great for them to give the district a heads up that they're going to come in and do some work, whether it's pull out dead logs or just clean it up from the garbage or whatnot. But they identified that as an area where they're interested in. So one other thing too, they also are aware of the neighbors in that area and very sensitive that those neighbors be contacted in terms of any work that's going on there. So I'll continue to encourage that. Again, our great Trails Coordinator, who is hopefully falling into the history of all the other wonderful Trails Coordinators we've had. And as you were saying, Councillor Gray, lots of volunteer hours that have been put in. And final point is great input that PTAS had in terms of the Centre Mountain Stormwater Plan as well. They thought quite deeply about that. So, and our engineer Al Hurley has their report. So that's it for my updates. And one final thing is just to note the letter from Ms. Beth Bacon, who we heard from earlier. So thank you very much, Bev. And hearing no Councillor Ray.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Councillor Ray, seconded by Councillor Rapp. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Thank you so much. Did not get that.